Of you may already be aware, it looks like Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez will be defending his WBC Super Flyweight Championship as the co-feature to the next fight between Gennady Golovkin and Daniel Jacobs. It looks like he's going to be fighting on March 18th, defending against Wisaksil Wangek, aka Srisaket Rungvisai, the man who Carlos Cuadras had defeated in order to become the WBC champion a couple of years ago, before Gonzalez, of course, ever went up to super flyweight in order to gain his fourth title in the fourth weight class against Cuadras in what was, definitely one of the fight of the years of 2016. My personal fight of the year, at least. But just wanted to make this video basically to give a little bit of an overview of who Srisaket Rungvisai, aka Wisaksil Wangek, is. He is a 30-year-old fighter with let me see, 45, 46 fights total, 41 and 4 with one draw and 38 knockouts in those 41 wins. So I mean that just shows you right there he's a big puncher. Three of those four losses were actually within his first five fights. He made his pro debut against the 9-2 Akira Yagashi. Of course, many of you know Yagashi from being a recent three-weight champion himself, 105, 112, and then 108. Currently still the IBF light flyweight 108-pound champion. Otherwise, he had two other losses within his first five fights, but since then he's been on a pretty, for the most part, a winning streak all the way up until he wound up losing his WBC title to Carlos Cuadras by technical decision a couple of years ago. It was what was a pretty good fight. Cuadras, I definitely think, was winning that fight. There are some people that dispute the whole way that Cuadras won that belt, the fact that it was a technical decision by cuts, from an accidental head clash, and the fact that Rungvisai was very much in that fight still, and he definitely was. He's a big power puncher. He was hitting Cuadras with some pretty good body shots, but Cuadras overall, I think, was just really a step ahead of him in that fight, and at the time of the decision, at the time of the stoppage for the technical decision, I would say that he was definitely in the lead, close but clearly. I think he was a little bit quicker and just a step ahead in terms of being able to get off his shots more quickly and cleanly than Rungvisai was able to do his. In spite of that, though, Rungvisai outside of that fight has been fairly dominant. He first won that WBC Super Flyweight Championship against Yota Sato back in 2013 via an eighth round technical knockout in a fight that he pretty much dominated almost the entire way through. Maybe lost maybe one or two rounds along the way. Otherwise, he also defended that title once before when he fought Cuadras against Hirofumi Mukai, another fighter from Japan, along with Sato, by a ninth round technical knockout in another fight where he pretty much dominated. Dropped Mukai early on and then eventually stopped him in the ninth round. I have footage of both of these fights, so I'm going to put them down in the description, and I'm also going to put footage of his successful wins after he actually lost to Cuadras against Bobby Concepcion, which was a fight for the WBC Asian Boxing Council Super Flyweight title, which helped to kind of keep Rungvisai in contention for the WBC belt, and then his successful win by a fourth round technical knockout over Jose Salgado, which was for the vacant WBC Silver Super Flyweight Championship. Which the silver titles, if some of you may be unfamiliar with them, they basically mean that you're the mandatory for the world champion. So he won that back in May of 2015. The WBC just announced at their recent convention that should Gonzalez have fought Cuadras in March as opposed to Rungvisai, then the winner of that fight was immediately going to have to make a title defense against Rungvisai. So basically, the way this is going is Gonzalez is going to fight Rungvisai, and the WBC actually kind of reversed that, where now the winner of Gonzalez versus Rungvisai is going to have to make an immediate title defense against Carlos Cuadras, just by virtue of the way their rankings work and the fact that they, I guess, feel that that Cuadras definitely deserves another shot at the title that he lost by a very, very thin margin. I think in most people's eyes, outside of what the actual judges' scorecards were. Definitely a very close fight. But Srisaket Rungvisai, to me, is definitely not an easy task. Very tough opponent, a guy that has knocked out a vast majority of his opponents, and matter of fact, has knocked out a vast majority of the opponents that he's fought at the world level. If you even just go down his overall record, most of the times that he's fought for any form of a championship, whether it's been like an Asian title or a world title itself, or like I mentioned before, the silver title, he's been winning by knockout. He's been just crushing guys, breaking them down. He's a very hard puncher, both to the body and the head. The body work is especially impressive. The fact that he mixes it up is pretty damn impressive as well. He has a brutal left hand. He's a southpaw, but he's a bit of a switch hitter sometimes too. Sometimes he'll switch over to orthodox. Although I definitely wouldn't uh, advise him to switch to orthodox against somebody like Gonzalez, who I think would probably make use of all the potential openings in his defense that he shows, especially as an orthodox fighter. He tends to be a little bit too squared up as an orthodox fighter, whereas as a southpaw, I think the way he kind of angles himself is a little bit better defensively. Although even then, he is still open to different types of counters and straight short shots, which is basically the way that Carlos Cuadras was able to beat him. Although Cuadras, the way that he beat Rungvisai, was really more of a hit and run, stick and move type of a fight. He used his speed, his agility, his athleticism in order to basically kind of stay a step ahead and to get off his shots a bit more cleanly and quickly, and then get out of dodge, get out of the way of any return fire from Rungvisai. I have never seen Rungvisai really get backed up, so with regard to Gonzalez's style, it'll be interesting to see if he really comes right at Rungvisai and tries to back him up, similar to the way that he kind of did against similar big punchers in Brian Valoria and McWilliams Arroyo. Although with Valoria and Arroyo, he did seem to be a little bit more tentative, a little bit more defensively sound in terms of the way that he put pressure on them. It's like he put kind of smart pressure and wasn't quite as anxious in order to just rush them, just completely bull rush them and completely smother them. But he did it in a way where it's like he utilized a lot of side steps along with his forward momentum in order to ratchet off his combos and be still defensively responsible, defensively sound in the midst of his own offense. And if you contrast that compared to the way that he fought Edgar Sosa and Carlos Cuadras, where I don't think he was necessarily as worried about what was going to be coming back in terms of return fire. Although he probably should have a little bit more with Cuadras, probably, where he really bull rushed both of them from the very opening and really made his pressure and his power known. With Srisaket Rungvisai, I definitely expect him to be a bit more temperate, a bit more methodical in his approach, not necessarily as recklessly offensive, but with a bit better of a transition between offense to defense back to offense. Um, just similar, like I said, to the way that he was with Brian Valoria and McWilliams Arroyo, because I would definitely put Rungvisai's overall level of power at the very least on the level of those two guys. I don't necessarily think that he has that same kind of one-shot pop as either of them necessarily, but he's a very heavy-handed guy, and it's just the way that he kind of puts everything together, accumulates damage, and ratchets off his combinations that makes him a very, very dangerous fighter. He hasn't necessarily been just one-shotting some of his opponents that he's knocked out, at least at the highest level. He has fought a number of, like a lot of fighters from Thailand, has fought a lot of guys that are on the lower level of the scale just in terms of staying active, and he's been able to one-shot a lot of those guys. But by and large, he's mostly breaking these guys down, just with overall punishing power. And yeah, and I'm assuming basically that's the general approach that he's going to take to Chocolatito. I think it's going to be a very good fight, though. To me, Srisaket Rungvisai is the best fighter without a title at 115 pounds. I'd still rank him probably in the top five, even without a world championship. If you were throwing him in there with the IBF champion German Akaz or the WBA champion Kaliafai, I would actually favor Srisaket Rungvisai over either of those guys. To me, I think he's very much a threat in this fight, and I think he would be a threat to anybody that he fights. The only guys I really favor over him in any sort of with any sort of clarity really are the likes of Gonzalez, Naoya Inoue, Carlos Cuadras, and Juan Francisco Estrada. outside of them, and even with them, I consider him a very, very viable threat, just for his power, his pressure. He seems to have pretty good stamina and conditioning, although that may be a potential flaw with him, because I'm not sure that he's ever gone past 10 rounds. So I think there is a possibility that he could flounder a bit in the late rounds. And even when he fought Carlos Cuadras, there were certain moments where he seemed to need to take a break. He seemed to need to take. He got a little winded at just the general pace, and having to chase Cuadras around the ring, having to try to cut the ring off on him. And he was able, Cuadras was able to capitalize on that, and Gonzalez may very well be able to capitalize off of those potential deficiencies in his overall stamina conditioning as well. But we shall see exactly what happens. Like I said before, check the description. I'm going to put, let me see, I think it's going to be 4 fights. Jose Salgado, Bobby Concepcion, Hirofumi Mukai, and Yota Sato. And if I find any other high-level fights of his outside one, also I'll put the Carlos Cuadras fight in there so as well. So that it'll probably be about 5 fights of his. You guys will be able to check out his style, break it down exactly how you think the fight may go ahead of time. Definitely a very tough, durable type of opponent. He's ostensibly at 115 pounds. He's almost like the way that Sean Porter is at 147 pounds. A very live threat to just about everybody, including the very top guys. And otherwise, a high level fighter in his own right, and definitely a tough former champion, a guy that really had deserved to become a champion from beforehand, and may one day become one again, and maybe sooner rather than later too. So that's all I have for this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.